Matt, the Seattle Sounders, news came out late last week that Seattle Sounders opening the door or seeking investment for the first time in their MLS era.
Yeah, this is interesting and obviously this is the kind of thing that happens and the announcement comes out and everybody goes, what does this mean? What is this about? Look, Adrian Hanauer has been the key figure in Seattle for a couple of decades now. He owned the team when they were in the old USL and the A-League, and now he's brought them into Major League Soccer, and they had Joe Roth, and they have some outside investment. He bought them out. He wanted to take control again. He is now the guy, but I don't think his pockets run so deep that you can imagine he could fund the next phase of elevating the Seattle Sounders. The Sounders have been relatively smart with their spending. They haven't been one of the flashier spenders despite all their success. They are more about the consistency of that organization. Obviously, you have a through line with Brian Schmetzer, who's a Seattle guy, who was an assistant under Siggy Schmidt, then took over, and now they've won all these titles and all of these things. You know, the story of the Seattle Sounders isn't we spent a ton of money, although at times they have been willing to do that, right? I think they spent $9 million to get Clint Dempsey here back when he joined the Sounders. They obviously spent some money on figures like Obafemi Martins. You could even say Nico Ladero, who, wasn't a flashy young South American player who was looking to move to Europe and certainly wasn't a massive name when he arrived, was an investment, a smart investment on the part of the Sounders. I think one thing that is maybe out there as a possibility is that this has something to do with the Sounders kicking the tires on building their own soccer-specific stadium, Rob. And I will direct everybody to Sounder at Heart, who covers the Sounders better than anybody. Jeremiah O'Shan and his crew. They know what they're talking about when it comes to the Sounders. They are on top of the story of the Sounders maybe considering this. Now, let's just take a snapshot of where they are right now. The Sounders, since entering Major League Soccer, have played in what is now Lumen Field. That is an NFL stadium built with the idea that soccer would be played there. I think that's a fair way to kind of illustrate what's happening at that stadium. Now, when it's full, and I've been there for an MLS Cup final, it is an incredible place for a soccer match. It still has artificial surface. It's still not ideal when you're not getting 60,000 out for a game. So, and of course, the Sounders don't own it. It's not their building. It is the Seahawks building, and they are tenants in it. And ultimately, that creates a problem when we're talking about maximizing what your club can bring in and what you can spend on your on-field product. So the idea of a soccer-specific stadium has been bouncing around. They're not going to be able to do that in downtown Seattle, which is where Lumen Field is. They would have to go out to the suburbs. And I'll bring in, again, Jeremiah O'Shan and Sounder at Heart. Jeremiah posted this to his Blue Sky account, I think last week, and I wanted to share it because it kind of illustrates the problem the Sounders might have if they consider building a soccer-specific stadium of their own. And it says here, if it's probably not a good sign that fully 1/3 of Sounders fans say that they would stop attending games if you move the team out of Lumen Field, and 25% say they would go less often. Now, this is also maybe a selection bias problem with the polling. Because if you're talking to people who are already Sounders fans, they are accustomed to going out to Lumen Field. They're accustomed to this is their habit. This is behavior. If you're the Sounders, are you thinking, oh, this is a reason not to do this? Or are you thinking we can retrain people and create new fans if we move to, I think it's called Longacres. It's Tukwila, Renton. I don't know the geography exactly. I've been there. It's a long time ago. But and ultimately, Rob, this is a tough question for any MLS team. Do you build away from a city center when that's been part of your identity if it means you get to control more of what your stadium is?
It's a big part of this program is, the building of new soccer-specific stadiums. And almost every single time, if your team played in an NFL stadium or a soccer stadium, that's generally an easy question to answer. But Seattle may be the most compelling argument one way or the other because they've had so much success in the NFL building, and it is catered. The field there, the Seahawks field, is more catered to soccer than more others. And they, like you said, they've already have a tradition. It's baked into the foundation of what that club is. And they are still able to fill it up. And from what I understand, when they only have the 30,000 in the top decks are closed, you can still produce a heck of an atmosphere. And the way
Yeah.
they are kind of the leaders in that, kind of workshopping the stadium to where, if there is closed sections, they kind of were on the edge of like still making it a great venue, even if the whole building isn't sold out. And I mean, I'm sure what will be the deciding factor is building and owning more profitable in the long run, or is maintaining the same while renting? So obviously they, with the higher capacity, they're able to get more ticket sales. They have more people
Yeah.
coming in. It's baked into
Sure.
their fabric. It's in the
Sure.
city. It's a part of the city. But if you're controlling the building, controlling all of the aspects of it in your own building, if that's in fact what this plan turns out to be, that is a very difficult decision.
Yeah, and again, they're looking at their numbers, they're looking at their business, but that is sometimes disconnected from the identity, the feeling of the club. Now, obviously, if you screw with the identity of your club, you can screw with your business in massive ways.
Yeah.
And that could have effects that were a long-term problem for your club. But we are now at a point where the Seattle Sounders might be seeing a ceiling on who they can be as MLS grows past its first couple of phases. And I know that sort of in this stew that we're talking about is this idea of how should MLS spending work in the near future, right? Lionel Messi's calling for an end of whatever, end of restrictions. That's not going to happen. And I know there's been debates in our comments and on our Discord about how to do this and what's the right way for MLS to go. But the Sounders may be looking at this, seeing the future and going, well, look, if we do want to keep up with LAFC and Inter Miami and whoever else, NYCFC, when they're in their own building, how do we do that? Can we do that from Lumen Field? That is a massive question. It is also worth pointing out, thanks to our MK Ultras. Here's Chris. Do you build a 30,000 seat stadium and own it, or rent 70,000 and not always fill it? You do have that. George is saying proposed schedule change could be a factor. Yes, it could absolutely be a factor. If you have less control of your venue and you're now playing through the bulk of the NFL season, and you might have scheduling issues. You might have dates that don't work. I mean, by the way, this is also maybe part of the story in Chicago. I think that Joe Mansueto always wanted to build a stadium for the Fire that could capture more of the spirit of Chicago because Bridgeview wasn't getting it done. But if they continue to play at Soldier Field and MLS does a calendar flip, that's a problem for the Chicago Fire. It's already been a problem for the Fire, and they're not playing through most of the NFL season. They're only playing through part of it. So I don't know. These are all things that are sort of in the air right now that these clubs are considering. And again, in terms of the investment here, they are launching a strategic capital raise. That is about funding something bigger down the line. It could be a stadium. It could be on the field investment. It could be something else. We just don't know.
Additional notes from Sportico. The investment asked for here will be limited to the Sounders and not include NWSL side Seattle Reign, which the Sounders purchased last year for reported $58 million. The investment go well beyond the investments involving Russell Wilson and Ken Griffey Jr. They're going to a whole nother level, and the Sounders are seeking outside investment for the first time since 2009. And Sportico calculates the value of the Sounders to be $825 million, which is wild to think that valuation could be so high without owning their own stadium.
I will make you a bet, and I don't think you'll take it because I think I'm going to be right. When we do see the investment happen, whatever new investment comes into the Sounders, it will put the value of the club above $1 billion. I'm not saying that's what they're actually worth. I don't want to get into that whole discussion about whether this is real or not. But when the investment comes in, it will put the valuation of the Sounders higher than Sportico's, over $1 billion, because that's the direction these things have moved in.